listening to this, you're probably about to start a landscaping project. I run Dean's Garden Landscapes. We're based in London, and so I'm going to try and communicate to you the ideas of what makes a successful landscaping project from a management point of view. Because you have to manage these things, or it can cost you a lot of money, believe it or not, and a lot of time, a lot of headache, and a lot of stress. So essentially, there are 3 golden guidelines for a successful landscaping project, from concept, design to construction. First and most importantly, we start at the beginning, which is the idea. The golden guideline number 1 is refine your ideas from the outset. Define your ideas, and beforehand, before it costs you money, before these problems come down the line, refine what you want to do and where you want to be with the design, the layout, and the actual creation and the construction. Don't fall on your face in the mud. I know it's an analogy based on landscaping itself, but you can literally end up falling on your face in the mud in this kind of stuff. Someone told me it happened to them. Someone knew a friend, fell face in the mud. Wasn't me. Might have been me. So important. Involve your ideas before you start, and understand what inhibitions apply to you. These are the things that are going to that you're going to want to consider. When you refine your ideas, get input from different sources. Do you know someone artsy? Do you know maybe a young person who's doing an art course, or someone who paints, or someone who does architecture or design? Get their input. Bounce your ideas off of them. Let's see what we can do. That's what you can actually generate in ideas yourself. It's a creative process, design. Narrow down your thoughts is half the fight. Be productive. Narrow down your thoughts. During the design phase, narrow things right down. What do you want to put in? What don't you want? What's the kind of look you're going for? Have a look at images online, who've done different things. Learn a little bit. Educate yourself on design. You can take an online course. Basics online. I think they sell them for £10-15, and and they talk through the different aspects of how you should lay out a garden or a grounds, and what things you should put in place. Where can people sit? Where will the sun come? Where will the shaded area be? What's the best place for certain kinds of plants? These are all considerations you're going to need. I cannot tell you how much money can be wasted when people don't go down the road of thinking through their ideas and not just implementing anything willy-nilly. This is why we work with a landscape architect, and with our input, the client's input, and then the landscape architect's input, you end up with a refined idea from the get-go, because it's been through a few filters before is it applicable? Well, I've got my experience, landscape architects got theirs, and the customers has theirs and what they want. So it's always useful to bounce things off. You can't go wrong with that kind of setup. That's why we say it's good to have somebody in the construction side that's actually going to make it, and then have somebody else as well. And then you've got a lot of help should you want solutions. It's a great thing to pull on. You don't want issues rising down the road. It will save you time and money to refine your ideas. You need an action plan. Medium to large landscape projects need a timed action plan. And if you are not experienced in this kind of work, then and even if you're doing small ones, you're going to need an action plan. Experience helps. Let's face it, for operators like us, commercial operators, it's much easier to implement these things than than the average Joe. They don't have the immediate instincts, experience, knowledge to actually solve these kinds of problems as they come up. So at least your approach to the task should be to our standards. So that's why I say follow my guidelines, and refine your ideas from the outset. Idea bubble. It's not just I want a garden. This is what I think it looks like. Let's spend the money. No, you got to break down idea bubble, and get to everything that you want out of it. Make sure that you're going to get that. Appreciate. So this is golden guideline number 2. We're on number 2 now. Appreciate your specific restrictions. your assets and how this impacts the projects, costings, the implementation and design. So experience is so important. I actually get a bad feeling in my gut when I talk to customers, and they, well, not just that. No, when they come up with a suggestion that I think is going to cause issues and pain, because I actually, like, subconsciously, I get these memories of when we had these problems, and people used to essentially uh, you know they we had these issues, and when people bring them up to me, it feels, if I get those memories of going down that road before, and then having caused me so much stress, anxiety and pain, and lost money and time. So there's an instinct there. So ask someone with experience. It can save you a lot of aggro. You must understand the circumstances of the work. Restrictions will affect costs, and the project lead times. I'll give you a typical example. You have an uneven garden. You want to regrade it, and you want to flatten it, and you want to put a completely modern garden in there, which is it's atypical of the stuff that people are asking from us. So what you have to understand is that if you do you have the facilities to occupy 25 tons of waste? Soil that comes out of the ground actually expands 1/3, so the volume to the tonnage is actually considerable. So you can imagine how much waste that is. I mean, that's nigh on half the size of your house. Do you have that kind of space to have to store all that waste? If not, you'll have to have skips. Skips are more expensive than grab lorries. So then those costs come up, and then permits are quite dear, and they start and they expire. So you have to make sure that your waste is ready to go, and then you have to take the weather into account. Is it ideal weather conditions for so is anything going to stop the work if you have permits in place? Otherwise, you'll have to get another permit, and that all affects the council's not going to necessarily be 100% on board with these fluctuations and change, and you have to get permissions to get permits. I think the average permit doesn't, they have restrictions depending on your council. So understand that things can go wrong from your project, for your project, and circumstances, given that knowledge. Okay, so you have to maybe consider along the lines that of number one, you have to refine your ideas. So you see how it links. So these are the problems, these are the ideas we have. We have to make it all nice and rounded before we can go ahead and implement anything. Let's say, for example, another common issue is you don't have access for machinery. It's very common for London townhouses to actually not have any access for machinery. I don't know why London does this to us, but London does this to us. It goes like, I've got an old Edwardian house, and you can bring coal in if you have half a wheelbarrow space from 1622. This is what London does. Or any old city for that. It's not necessarily had the idea in their heads that you're going to bring half a ton digger in, and you're going to need to bring that, or half a ton. That's the smallest really goes. 750 kg, which is it's quite heavy. You might not have the ideal access, or to bring something through and not damage everything. But that cost, that affects the cost, because if all the labor has to be done manually, so consider that. Do you have access for machinery? Do you know? Is it something that is on the books for you? Because that can save a lot of labor. And if you don't, how much is that labor going to cost? Perhaps you'd like to consider another plan in light of that information. Maybe you'd want to make a raised deck instead of excavating. That's a good solution for a lot of people. Although the price of wood keeps increasing, so that doesn't, it narrows as well. So these are all things that we have to consider. What are the circumstances of the job in of itself? What are the restrictions in place? If we don't think these through and we get there, that's when all the costs occur. That's where the headache incur, and then also leading on to guideline number 3 that I'm going to talk So So try to understand that, that costs can rise exponentially if you don't go through these steps, these guidelines, and understand that, think through the plan and do your research beforehand if you're going to do the job yourself, or know that your contractor at least appreciates these things before you go ahead with them. So golden rule number 3, and what realistic time frame could this work be achieved in? How much inconvenience can that cause? And this will be mitigated and fully understood if you actually, juggle these ideas around and realize, oh wow, so this can't be done like that, or it can't be done. And then you understand that, okay, so this is the realistic time frame for doing this work. And this hurts, and it can hurt if you don't understand that, because it can cause major inconvenience. So you get people sometimes, they're like, man, I saw something on YouTube, man, and it took like 3 days, man, and they did all the work and it was like amazing. Why is it gonna take you guys like a whole week, man? Like, can't you do it in like 2-3 days? And because the reality is, the only way we could get a digger in that size is by demoing your neighbour's house, which they're probably not going to be too happy about. So it's all around, which comes back to the idea of, it all comes around the actual circumstances of your actual project. Consider, have you taken a soil sample? Because if it rains and you have clay soils, what'll happen is that a lot of work can't actually happen if you have clay soils. If you have a certain amount of clay in your soil, because it becomes saturated, machinery won't, will fall all over the place. Sometimes even tracked stuff you can have problems with, and machinery can fall all over the place, and so sometimes the soils can cause a real issue, and that'll cause your your lead times to be all off, and how long it takes for some clay soils to actually run out of water once they're actually saturated can be quite some time. Have you asked, wisdom is the most important tool. Wisdom is the most important tool you can bring to a landscaping project. Have you asked your neighbours their plans? Maybe they're having a wedding next week. Maybe, God forbid, somebody should die, you don't know. You don't know the guy. You don't want to be operating a digger and breaking out concrete. God forbid. You don't want to be operating a digger and breaking out concrete on the day of my daughter's wedding. God forbid something terrible should happen to you. Bada bing, bada boom, bada boom. You should end up under the patio. Accidents happen, God forbid. So consider, seriously though, I doubt you're actually living next door to the mafia boss, big man himself, but it's something to consider. Consider your neighbours, so consider their thoughts, These are the things you have to put in place. So make a plan, the rest will come. Landscaping it's not all fun. It is for me, probably not for everyone, especially when the problems come up. Everybody gets stressed out. It's no good for anyone. No, it is. It's great fun, but you have to plan. You have to go about it the right way. It's like the weird sister said in Macbeth, by the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. And that is what a landscaping project actually is, It's a real monster if you don't go about it the right way. So make a plan, put yourself in the right place, And remember, talk less, smile more, anything to get your bill on the Congress floor. I couldn't help myself. I love Hamilton playwrights. It's on me. I actually have a channel just on my writing and stuff like that. But obviously this is for my landscaping. So do yourself a huge favour. Put this plan into action. Make yourself an action plan. Consider these different elements. Consider refining your idea from the outset with a professional, or you know, getting input from someone artsy, someone who's going to give you an idea from the actual layout side of things before you get into the construction issues that might arise, because they are smaller, they are less issues to have than having the overall problem of finishing your project and not liking it. It happens. People will give you something, you'll make it, and they'll go, "Oh, great." That's not great for business. And you know, I learned that you say you will go with the right idea. We don't go with the wrong idea, because that's what's going to cause issues down the line. Refine your ideas, understand the problems and restrictions that you might have, and the cost implications of those restrictions. So, so go into this with a multifaceted analysis of what you're actually going to put into practice, from the design to the actual implementation. You do that, you'll be absolutely pontificatingly, wonderfully, gorgeously fine. So no, seriously, you know, if you're about to start a landscaping project, I think you'll do wonderfully. I hope you do wonderfully, and reach out to me. I'm always happy to help, give guidelines, and the rest of it. And I would like to thank one last person, and that would be Johnny Boy from Green Top Landscapes. He does an absolutely cracking show, and cracking work. And he actually encouraged me to start this channel, and because it's great to share experience. And yeah, so those are my 3 guidelines, and big shout out to Johnny Boy in Wales. How does this thing end? Technology mates, I cannot figure out.